Coming to you from Guthrie City Hall, this is the Roundup.
Hello, welcome to the Roundup. I'm your host, Chris Evans. Today we continue our conversation with State Senator A.J. Griffin, who represents District Number 20, and State Representative John Pfeiffer of District 38. You want to get things fixed for this year, but you got to think of years down the road as well.
You do, because we run great risk. If even when the economy recovers, we're still going to need to invest money in long-term projects. We don't want to start behind the eight ball.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things that I've kind of learned this year, and I didn't realize, one of the almost kind of negative side effects of budgeting transportation funding the way we do, a lot of states will just bond their whole transportation projects. Oklahoma transportation bonds get dinged. We pay a slightly higher interest rate because we pay cash for most things because of the way our Constitution and our balanced budget amendment's set up. It's kind of weird to me that there is a system out there that encourages states to go into debt. We're paying a slightly higher interest rates and a little bit of a penalty for being financially prudent.
And there's a sweet spot on debt where you have enough that people know you're going to pay it back, but not so much that they jeopardize their ability to recoup their costs.
Yeah. As part of the budget, you got to add stuff, take away stuff, and then a big part of that is tax credits. And we hear tax credits all the time. What is exactly tax credit? What are some examples of maybe some good tax credits and bad tax credits?
Well, every Oklahoman benefits from tax credits because we all file income tax return. We have our personal deductions. Of course, the agriculture exemption for many of the taxes that get paid is very important to the state's economy, and everybody knows about those. But we also have corporate incentive programs. And there's a whole slew of them. We have an entire menu. Those have been evaluated. We know there are some that every dollar we're investing brings back multiple dollars back to the state. We're not taking a look at those, but there have been tax credit programs that we've identified that, maybe they were used as a training wheel to get an industry started, and now that industry should be able to function on its own without the extra Senate assistance. So we're at that place where we have several that we've identified between the two chambers that we're considering making changes in. Some of them we're eliminating. So a lot of bills being thrown around right now. And then there's some things that were just ideas. We want to throw them out and see how the members of both of the chambers react to that.
I know the House and Senate both started looking at ideas, one to either get rid or raise more revenues or get rid of things that we didn't need that were costing us money. And so this is something that has been worked on for months and months, just trying now to kind of figure out what actually is beneficial to the state in the long term and what can we live without.
Another part of that is the Medicaid, and something you're close with, AJ, something we talked about in our last thing, around 25%. You said that was going to be nowhere close, and you're right on that.
It is a priority. We remain with the same two funding priorities. That's common education and the Medicaid program. And within the Medicaid program, we've identified long-term care as the number one priority, and that's our nursing home residents, ensuring that we are able to maintain a network of care in all communities in Oklahoma, especially in the rural areas. And then just after that, our disability services have taken some fairly significant cuts over the last couple of years. Those are Advantage waiver services. So services provided to people in their own homes so that we can keep those individuals out of high-cost residential care. We want to make sure that we stabilize those as well. And then, of course, our doctors and our hospitals are important as well.
And it becomes especially important for my district, which is a little more rural. Rural hospitals, which rely so heavily on Medicaid, take a disproportionate amount of the cut, it seems like. It's been extremely important ever since, the director said that we were going to see up to 25% cuts, which was never going to be the case. We've worked really hard into trying to find different funding sources. Gasoline
tax is really not being seriously discussed at the state level at this point. Although I'm sure it's something we will do research over the interim to look at the impact that's going to have. And it's important for everybody to remember that. It sounds really good for those of us that just fill up our own personal car, but gasoline's pretty important to every single industry in the state of Oklahoma as we move goods around. How would that be passed along to the cost of the consumer as we increase the cost of transporting everything from shingles to shampoo? So that one's really not being considered too much this session.
And when you look at gasoline, I don't know if it's just my observations, but when they do gasoline prices at the pump around the region, Texas, it seems like Oklahoma's always the lower gas. I don't know if that's because of tax reasons or.
Partly it's because of tax reasons. Partly it's because we live in a very productive oil and gas state, which has always been beneficial. I know one of the ideas, and again, like Senator Griffin said, it's something we've talked about this year. We simply don't have enough time to see what impact it's going to have. But I know one of the ideas that I think we're going to continue to work on during the interim, at least from the House side, is almost like a floating gasoline tax almost index. When the price of gasoline drops and the price of oil drops, which hurts Oklahoma's economy, the price of gasoline or the amount of tax on gasoline would slowly increase to try to offset that. There's some other states that do that. I think it is definitely something Oklahoma should look at, and we could try to do, but we can't just do everything all at once because we're in this difficulty. It has to be slow, it has to be measured, and we have to make sure we're not overkilling things and hurting other industries in the process.
We kind of need to be strategic about what we're doing and make decisions based on what the data tells us is going to be the long-term impact. So there, no need to panic. This too shall pass.
I kind of, when people start, well, my colleagues in the House start getting extremely frustrated, what are we going to do? Oh my gosh, goodness, the sky is falling. I remind them that out of the oil crash of the 80s and in kind of an effort to expand Oklahoma's economy, that's what led to the Native American Heritage Center. So we want to think these ideas through and not get into situations like that again.
Absolutely. The 1 cent sales tax proposed to help fund education and teacher salaries got enough signatures, 300,000 plus. Now it's going to head to the Supreme Court to see if it's going to go to the ballot in November. A lot of people are saying early since the beginning this has gone through. Of course, the people are ahead of this. Oklahoma University President David Boren headlined this deal, but it's gotten a lot of negative feedback, so it'll be interesting.
It will be interesting, and the thing that they don't say, and there's no one at the state capitol in the general population. I haven't heard anyone who says, you know what, teachers get paid way too much, they don't need a pay raise. Right. We all know that's not the case. What's the best way to do that? The impact of a 1 cent sales tax on cities and municipalities would be devastating. Oklahoma would go to one of the highest sales tax states in the nation. Cities and municipalities, which only can collect sales tax. It's what they operate everything else on, from trash collection, fire, police, the whole shebang, would have to then, in response to the state raising its sales tax, lower theirs. You would see a direct impact in public safety, numerous other things that these, especially when you get in rural communities that relied heavily on oil and gas traffic to generate their sales tax revenue. They've seen that dry up. I think it would be a huge blow to cities and municipalities across the state.
Well, and when it comes to education funding, part of the problem is how complicated education funding is. And every few years, it seems like we're on another cycle of we're going to come up with another education funding gimmick. We've got the lottery, the 1017 fund, and we just continue to do that. The problem with dedicated funding streams is it complicates the process. As legislators, we want to know how much does it cost to provide a quality education in every community in the state, and let's fund it that way. We've gotten so complicated that we probably need to kind of unwind some of the funding streams, go back to the starting board, and because we want to pay what it costs, and the taxpayers of the state of Oklahoma want to pay what it costs.
Say right now 4.5% would go to 5.5%, which makes Oklahoma pretty elite if that were to happen too.
Would make us number one in the country.
Yes.
Yeah. That's elite.
No, we want to be number one in the country in football and in basketball,
Right.
And we want to win NCAA championships and NBA finals. We don't want to be number one in sales tax.
Absolutely. We'll move on to another topic you mentioned just a second ago with the lottery, with education. But Oklahoma lottery, was it oversold a little bit when it comes to the state? According to a recent report, the lottery was projected to bring in $200 million for schools, but closer to $70 million, which represents about 2% of a school's budget, according to a report. Right.
And those numbers are correct.
Okay.
I don't like the lottery. Not at all. It was definitely oversold to the regime that was in charge at the state capitol at the time they were pushing that through. Of course, every dime education gets is beneficial.
Right.
The problem I see with the lottery, just kind of understanding the social context behind the lottery, those who can afford to gamble, great. But if you look at an education lottery, where the convenience stores that sell lottery tickets, the most lottery tickets, all lie in the school districts with the lowest outcomes. it's very much an inverse additional, although voluntary tax, but the individuals that are paying that voluntary tax are in districts with low education performance. It doesn't do what it was sold to the Oklahoma people that it was going to do. Building a budget on gambling of any kind is a little bit of a risk, and this is a risk that we've got a little bit of a reward, but it certainly isn't the windfall it was sold as.
And I don't think the participation numbers are there as they thought too. A lot of people aren't playing.
Well,
a
lot of people, when it first started, it was a novelty thing. Texas has it, Kansas had it. If you were driving through there, you stopped and bought a lottery ticket. Now that this has become more widespread, it's lost its appeal. And it's just one more thing that again, was oversold to help education, whether it was the lottery, whether it was horse racing, the list goes on. All of these things are supposed to be the magic bullet that fixed education, and it's not. At the end of the day, it's a regressive tax on some of our poorest citizens that as one college professor of mine used to say, the lottery is a tax on people who can't do math and understand odds. But it's not a way we need to fund education, and having putting the state in the position where they have to actively go out there and push people to gamble more so that we can fund things is not a situation the state of Oklahoma needs to be in.
Yeah, it's, a lot of people, when discussing education, which we have this year, they always bring up the lottery. It's always, the questions, where's the money? It's just, I don't think a lot of people are participating as they once thought. So
yes.
We'll move on to gun control. There's a lot of talks on both sides right now in the media right now with the open carry without having to go through a background check or a safety class or anything. Right now, you have to do that with the OSBI. The Oklahoma City Thunder have come out against it. The Oklahoma City Police Chief come against it. A lot of universities have come out against it. It's one of those tough situations for you guys because no matter what you do, it sounds like it's going to be about a 50-50 split from just reports that I see.
The senators and the House members get together to try to figure out how can we protect people's Second Amendment rights without compromising public safety? And that's where they're at in the process right now. They're meeting with law enforcement officers, they're meeting with victims advocacy groups, things like that, hearing all their voices, hearing their concerns, and meeting with the people, the groups who want to protect their Second Amendment rights, OK2A and groups like that, to try to figure out what the proper balance is so that we don't lose things like the NCAA tournaments that we have. The Thunder, obviously, so we don't violate NBA contracts, things like that, but still allow our citizens to protect a right that they care very deeply about. So that's trying to balance things out right now is the best way I could say where they're currently at.
One of the great things about living in the United States is we've got 50 states that we can evaluate and see, okay, how's this working elsewhere?
Right.
And the states on gun rights kind of run the gamut. Everything from states that have constitutional carry, where if you're a citizen, you're allowed to carry a firearm, all the way to some states with very strict gun control laws. So looking at what's best for Oklahoma. And the good news is that a lot of the statistics don't necessarily bear out some of the panic. I know that when we moved from a licensed concealed carry to a licensed potential open carry, there were people that were really worried about the impact it was going to have on our society. Well, we really kind of haven't seen a lot of those things. In fact, very, very, very few Oklahomans choose to carry their weapon open if they're carrying one. So I think we'll find out that, and whether either of these move forward, which is, we'll see how the things shape out over the next few days. But law enforcement will make sure that it still results in reasonable, and there'll be safety in the streets.
And it's tough. It would be tough for police officers, with day-to-day stuff. And then, if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder, do you want 1,000 guns out of 18,000 people in your arena? And then, but on the other side, you have the Constitution people, and they say, well, there's 30 other states, and everything seems to be fine over there.
And I'll say this, that there is nothing that's being proposed that infringes on personal property rights at all.
Correct.
And so, and I've heard also from some constituents that they would be at the age of 18. That's not correct either. The bill is written at 21. So a lot of things for us to consider.
Oklahoma saw a record number of people file for public office locally in Logan County. We've seen 7 candidates for sheriff and 3 for county commissioner. I think this is a good thing.
I think it is, and for the last couple of years, at least on the House side, we've seen more of the effects of term limits. By this year, we're going to have one of the largest classes ever terming out. add that with the people that are just not filing again or stuff, we're going to see at least 30 new House members, and that's before any other races shake out. We had more people file for public office this time than we ever had before in Oklahoma's history. I think our last record was 2004. And I think part of it's the general mood the country's in right now. There's a lot of strong opinions on both sides, and a lot of people are upset. Well, things that are going on federally, some of the things that are going on in the state. Some people in my family are just mad and they don't know why they're mad, but they're mad and they want to do something about it. And so it's great that we live in America where they can. And I think the amount of interest we have in political life is going to bring in some new ideas, some fresh ideas, and hopefully some better solutions to some problems we haven't seen before.
I thought it was a safe conversation. You didn't draw a opponent this year. It's not your election year, so I thought it was a safe question to go with today.
Yes.
I decided that I should have checked into that Sheriff of Logan County job because apparently it's a pretty good job.
Yeah.
A lot of people want it.
A lot of people. Yeah, officially 99 senators, hopeful senators applied, 285 reps. Of course, 11 senators are termed out, 1 not running, I last heard, and then 19 reps have turned out, 8 not running. So that always opens up a lot of doors when the incumbent is leaving.
A lot of doors. And I think on the House side, when you add the incoming freshman class, which is at least going to be 30 new members, with the group of guys that I came in with, men and women, you're looking at around 50. Out of a 101 member body, over half of them will have less than 5 years experience, which has its positives and its negatives. I know my first year, you spend the first couple weeks trying to remember which door you walk in and out of and where the bathrooms are, and then trying to figure out which questions you need to ask. Mm-hmm. But you also, again, have some ways of looking at things that nobody's ever seen before, or you haven't. You don't know what you can't do. Right. I guess one of the perfect examples I think, at least that I've seen in the last 2 years, is over in the Senate. Senator Bice came in and wanted to kind of reform Oklahoma's alcohol laws. And everybody else who had been in there was like, well, no, you can't do that. It's in the Constitution. Nobody's ever been able to do that in the state of Oklahoma. And again, sometimes when you don't know that you're not supposed to be able to not do something, you just end up doing it. And that's what she's done. And that's why we've seen SJR 68, which we've talked about before, some trailer bills. And we're actually going to see some modernization of Oklahoma's liquor laws that the people really want, just because you didn't know you weren't supposed to do that.
Yeah.
She was able to do that in year 2.
Yes.
The process is pretty fascinating. And I think about in the Oklahoma legislature, we think it's a great idea. This is the way we run our state. We pick a whole bunch of random people that don't know each other, that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Mm-hmm. So massive age range, both genders, races, religions, background, professions, and we lock them in a building that the vast majority of it doesn't have air conditioning for 4 months and say, go solve all the state's problems. And believe it or not, after 109 years, we're still doing pretty well as a state. It's tough times, but we've seen tougher as a state, and we've had legislatures before that have had even larger challenges and managed to rise to the occasion and solve those problems. And this crazy band of misfits in the Oklahoma legislature we'll be able to get it done again.
So when you're a freshman legislator going in and you get assigned to these committees, do you have an option? Do you have, I like to do that, or do they just kind of give the rookie the old office? Whatever?
In the House side, at least under Speaker Hickman, which is the only speaker I've ever served under, so I don't know any different. Right. We submitted which committees we would like to be on. They take into account what your background is, what your interest is, what your profession was before, and so they try to match up the people with the committees that they would better understand and better serve in.
What is the legislature doing for the long-term status of Kevin Durant staying in Oklahoma City?
We haven't messed with the Thunder's tax credits, which they do have. There are some special incentive programs who are part of bringing professional athletics to the state, not just the Thunder, but there's also soccer and hockey and those types of things. So we haven't messed with those. And we're all very, very supportive of the Thunder.
Absolutely.
Very
Thunder
supportive.
up. I think it's official. The state of Oklahoma supports athletes of all types.
Well, what the water, the river, all the activities on the river too. with the addition of that stuff down
Yes, the new, like the Olympic training for
Yeah.
kayaking, looks fun.
And we're back to why it's important to protect cities' capacities to access sales tax, because that's really what's made that made happen. That's why the Thunder's in Oklahoma City, because of the development of maps over the last few, and that's the investment of Oklahoma City, not necessarily the state's investment.
Right. Absolutely. Appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us today, and I know it's a hectic schedule the rest of the way. Best of luck, and you'll need it.
Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate you joining us this installment of the Roundup. Hope you enjoyed it. We appreciate Representative Pfeiffer and Senator A.J. Griffin joining us here today. We'll talk to you next time on the Roundup.